People that have woken up in bed with a stranger. What's your story? Story 1. When I was 11, I went to my friend's place for a horror movie sleepover night. I woke up with a 4-year-old boy who turned out to be her little brother clinging to all my blankets in fear. He had eavesdropped on our sleepover after pretending to go to bed early, and was now convinced a killer doll would murder him in his sleep. Their mom made us all hot chocolate, and then he slept in her bed all night. We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description. Story 2. I was taking a train from Munich to Venice. It was one of those trains that the little rooms have chairs that pull out into beds. An older Italian gentleman came into the room, and as the train took off, he made the sleep hand gesture. So I crashed out with this old dude. I woke up to him tapping me, letting me know we'll be in Venice after the next stop. Story 3. I was around 19 years old and at a weekend festival where most people camped out in tents. I got hammered and blacked out on Saturday and woke up on an air mattress in somebody else's tent. I sat up to get my bearings at some point in the morning, and a couple was also in the tent but not laying on the air mattress. The guy sat up right after me and said, "Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you better get the frick out of here." I didn't stick around to ask any questions. Story 4. Not really woke up with a stranger, but I did wake up on a stranger's couch once. Looked around and sat up to see a woman staring at me. I was startled and I realized I had no idea who she was. Then I realized I was only in my underwear, so I half covered up and she asked who I was. I said my name and asked where Jill was, the girl I thought I went to see. She looked confused for a second before bursting out laughing. Turns out Jill's neighbor didn't lock her door and I was obviously very drunk. I ended up making a sandwich and drinking half a carton of orange juice before hitting the couch. Thank God she was so nice. Skylar, if you're reading this, thank you for not calling the cops. If this is what OP does when he gets drunk, he's lucky he doesn't get drunk in some, rougher areas of America. Story 5. This reminds me of the dude who showed up on the couch of my apartment in college and stayed for weeks. So I had 3 roommates who I wasn't really close with and basically only slept at this place. So I assumed the guy was a friend of one of the other 3. I'd stop in to eat or grab stuff and there he'd be in his underwear, often playing video games that belonged to my roommates on the couch. About a week of this goes by and one of my roommates finally approached me and asks about how long my friend will be staying on the couch, and also if I could talk to him and request that he ask before playing my roommate's video games. I respond, "I don't know the guy. I thought he was your or Justin's friend." Nope. We go to the 4th roommate and ask him. He didn't know either. So we all have a little conference to decide how to approach it. Being that I didn't spend much time there, I said I didn't care how they handled it, but because I thought the whole situation was hilarious and I respected the guy in a weird way, if it were totally up to me, I wouldn't say anything at all. I would just see how it would end without our intervention. Like, would he stay? For how long? Would he slowly try to gain power? Anyway, so I leave it up to them and go about my way. Couple days go by and clearly no one has spoken to him because he's still there. Finally, a beautiful thing happened. I came home to find him playing video games with 2 of the roommates. They were interacting like old pals. This went on for another week or 2. The couch drifter getting on swimmingly with my other roommates. Then one day, he was just gone. No goodbyes, no drama, just gone. I think about that guy a lot. The balls to just walk into an occupied apartment and take over the couch and TV. I mean, he must have slept on our couch for a good month or 2. I respect how Opie and his roommates handled this. The guy obviously wasn't a threat. I mean, he's been there long enough, so you know what? Why not just ride it out? Story 6. Not me, but a neighbor was a member of a fraternity and they all went downtown and got completely wasted. He doesn't remember how he got separated from his buddies, but woke up in a very soft bed, not knowing where he was. He saw a large, fluffy, flowered bathrobe on the back of the door and put it on. He heard some voices and started walking towards them. He walked into the dining room and there was an all-black family smiling in relief at him. My neighbor was a southern white guy. They were all eating breakfast and the father pulled out a chair right beside him and made him a heaping plate of scrambled eggs, grits, toast, and bacon. My neighbor had left the bar in a drunken state and had come upon their car and passed out in their back seat. Thankfully, all ended up okay. He kept in touch with that family for a long time afterwards. Story 7. Probably not what you imagined. As a kid, I would sleepwalk at night. In the morning, I would have no recollection of what happened. So I spent the night at a friend's house when I was about 10, and the family had a fire going on in the fireplace in their living room. My friend's mom decided to sleep on the couch to make sure the fire went out, and the dad went to sleep in the parents' bedroom. Due to the door to their bedroom always being closed, I had never been inside, which was very, very disorienting the next morning when I awoke in said bedroom. As the dad was just waking up and getting out of his bed, He had assumed during the night I was his son and didn't question anything when I slipped into bed with him. Kudos to Dad for not making it any more awkward than it already was. And that's the story of how I awoke next to my friend's dad. Story 8. My freshman year roommate warned me on day 1 that he was a sleepwalker. A few months later, I woke up to a weird smell, rolled over, and saw him standing in front of the microwave watching a whole loaf of bread spin around inside, as the plastic melted and smoke billowed out into his face. I yelled, "Dude, what the?" And he said, direct quote, "It's fine," and just got back into bed. I ran over and opened the microwave to shut it off. 30 seconds later, fire alarms are blaring and the whole building is being evacuated. We get downstairs and I, joke you not, he looks at me and says, "I bet some dumb guy burnt popcorn again." I don't even know how the dude made it to 18 without killing himself. Story 9. Not as raunchy as some of the stories, but a friend of mine in college woke up in some random girl's bed that she didn't know. She was so drunk that she thought it was her dorm room and the door was open, so she got in the bed and slept. When she woke up, there was a note next to her that said something like this: "Hey, I don't know who you are, but you were really asleep last night. Don't worry, it's cool if you crash here. I was going to spend the night at my boyfriend's. Just please make sure you close the door when you leave. P.S. I left you a glass of water on the nightstand." Apparently, that girl came back to her room and found my friend passed out on her bed. She decided to be real nice and just let her sleep it off. Story 10. The stranger wasn't in my bed. He was standing beside it and looking down at me. He was not in my apartment when I went to bed. He had broken in and apparently spent quite a bit of time in there before entering my bedroom. He'd broken in through one door and created an exit for himself that took him past the door he'd entered through and out through our other, almost never used door. I chased him out, but lost him in the alley behind my building. The police believed that my reaction saved me from an assault and possibly abduction. Unfortunately, they never caught the guy. Now, I know this wouldn't be the case in the moment, but just having someone looking down on you while you're sleeping is definitely more unsettling to think about than them actually doing anything. Like, there's no clear end goal with that, it's just weird. Story 11. Oh god, wish this hasn't happened as often as it has. As a tiny female, I'm lucky to be alive. One specifically stands out. I was out drinking with my dad, he was in town visiting, uncle, and my brothers. Across from our table are these two guys visiting from Tennessee. At some point, my uncle starts chatting with them and invites them to join our table. One is very Matthew McConaughey-like, so naturally I'm trying to be subtly flirtatious. I drank a lot that night, to the point where I'm pretty spotty on leaving the bar. Or even the fact that my family just let me leave with these two random guys. I woke up in their hotel room. Turns out it was 7 guys sharing the room. And I had the entire bed to myself. They even put the comforter over me while a couple had the other bed and the rest slept on the floor. One of the dudes even went and got breakfast for us all, including me. They tried to convince me to go to the Fish concert that they were in town for, but I had to work. What was OP's family thinking? Like, wow, this is best case scenario, but what? Story 12. Not a bed, but kind of an abandoned trailer in the middle of the desert. Found shelter, slept in it, woke up, and there was another person in there. They didn't know that I was in there either. When I stood up and looked around, they were staring at me all wide-eyed and clearly freaked out. I didn't know what to do, and we just kind of looked at each other for a bit. I don't know what to say, so I offered her some corn nuts. We both laughed at that, and then we shortly left without asking any questions. That's the closest I've ever been to a one-night stand. Story 13. I used to date this really crappy guy. We lived together for 5 years, and in that time, some hella dicey stuff happened. But this one makes the top 5 for sure. It was a Sunday night, around 2 a.m. I was asleep in bed when I'm awoken by that feeling of someone staring at me. Assuming it's my then boyfriend, I tell him I'm trying to sleep and don't want to bang. Then I hear a laugh I'd never heard before. I fly out of the bed, and there's this guy sitting on the edge of my bed, laughing his butt off. I ask him who he is, and he says, "Oh, I'm Andrew, your boyfriend's buddy." Then he tells me how my ex told him I was a prude and would be mad if he came in our bed, but he didn't believe my ex cause boyfriend was so cool, why would he date a boring girl? Then he asked if I wanted some drugs. I walked out and told my ex to get rid of him and let me sleep since I worked in the morning. His reply, "Well, now that you're up, can you take us to McDonald's?" Story 14. This has happened to me multiple times because I black out really easily, but the crazier of times goes like this. I was 21, and had just gotten into a fight with my GF in front of her whole family at their Christmas party. We were both drunk and we broke up for the 4th and final time that week. I stormed out without my house keys, my wallet, or my phone. I drank an entire handle to myself at that point. Walked to the local bar about 2 miles away and realized I didn't have any money, but I did remember my cigarettes, which I used to trade for more shots. Next morning, I was naked in bed with a couple twice my age over 40 miles away from my apartment. They said, "Nothing happened, you just cried a lot and said you didn't have a place to go, so we took you in and cuddled." The boyfriend drove me to work and I moved out of state the next week. Story 15. I was in college, staying near campus, and decided to go to a frat party. I decided to walk home before the liquor kicked in too much. By the time I got home, I was blacking out. I barely made it. Got to my bed and passed out, didn't even take my shoes off. I woke up off and on throughout the night feeling some person next to me. I figured it was a girl I had been dating. She'd come over if she got scared at night or something to sleep at my place. I never thought much of it. She cuddled me that night and it felt amazing. Guys love being the little spoon sometimes, by the way. The sun woke me up and I decided to go pee. I remember having to step over her to get out of the bed, losing my balance because I was still drunk. So I go pee, come back, and notice that this is not the girl I'm dating. Also, she's in her underwear. Crap. Then I notice I only have boxers on. I don't remember getting undressed. My clothes are folded on a computer chair next to a half-eaten grilled cheese. I immediately go to my roommate's room to ask who she is. He's in bed with his girl. I woke him up and he said the girl claimed she knew me. I was afraid. I go back to the living area until she wakes up. Apparently, she didn't have a ride home, and since she stayed far, I drunkenly offered her a place to crash. She helped me walk home, unlocked the door for me because I was out of it, undressed me, and folded my clothes. Then she made me grilled cheese because I was drunkenly begging for one. I ate half of it and laid down. Initially, she was on the couch, but said that I was calling to her loudly like a banshee. She cuddled me until I fell asleep, and then she fell asleep. I was embarrassed and thankful. She took care of me. I took her home and we laughed about it. We stayed friends for a long time, hung out more than a few times. We were never more than friends because I was already dating someone. Sometimes I wonder if she was the one for me. I don't know how we lost touch. I don't even like grilled cheese. Story 16. I've done that a lot. Most recently, just a couple of days ago. I tend to ask why we're naked and where my clothes are. My wife says I'll discreetly paw around for my sidearm despite not having carried a work-related sidearm for years. It usually feels pretty cool, like, oh, I'm in bed with an attractive person, that's gotta be good. There's often a little concern that I'm naked and in bed where that might not be appropriate. This is all caused by post-ictal amnesia, temporary memory loss after a seizure. I did have this happen a long time back in the way I guess OP meant. After a party, I awoke with a very small, very effeminate, very good-looking man in bed with me. I was straight, which made it even more odd. I recalled seeing him the night before, but we hadn't spoken. I was live-in security for the party host and had to get up to take care of a couple of things, so I quietly crept out. When I returned, he was still snoring away, so I sat at my desk and read. When he woke up, he explained that after the party had wound down and just a few people were awake talking, one of the other guests started becoming verbally hostile to him, saying homophobic things, insinuating threats and such. Everyone was asleep, and he was afraid to leave, but he didn't feel safe anywhere there. I had my own room, and he knew I was straight, but not a homophobe. My employer/host was super gay, so he knew he'd be safe with me. He tried to wake me up, but said I just mumbled and went back to sleep. I was pretty pissed he had been harassed and embarrassed I hadn't awoken. I reassured him that it was fine and brought him with me to staff breakfast. The other staff giggled and whispered, thinking we'd hooked up. And I didn't deny it, because how could I do that without making him feel undesirable? I treated him like a king, bringing him his food and coffee, introducing him to the staff as a trusted friend, then let him pick which of my boss's car to get driven home in by my boss's driver. He chose the Porsche. The guy who harassed him was ushered into a private room by a couple of us at the next party he attended. My boss threw like 3 a week. And we explained if he ever made the little effeminate guy uncomfortable again, we would screw his world up. Then he was escorted off the property and told to never return. I felt flattered that the little guy trusted me, and it strokes my ego that people thought I'd managed to hook up with him, as he was a very classy, very attractive man. Outside of my league, like a small Pierce Brosnan. Story 17. After my father's death, his sisters asked my family to spend a summer weekend with them at a beach resort town. It ended up being the vacation from hell for many reasons, but this part fits the prompt. The aunts didn't tell us they were bringing their extended family, so we had 13 people crammed into a 1-bedroom condo. Most of us slept on the living room floor, which was also the dining room and kitchen. On Saturday night, my teenage cousin stayed out late while the rest of us returned to the condo and went to sleep. The next morning, we woke up to find a 14th person in the condo, a guy in his late teens to early 20s. My teen cousin explained that she'd met him while partying and he didn't have a place to stay, so she let him crash with us. She let a complete stranger into the room where her grandmother, mother, sister, aunts, and cousins, two of whom were children, were sleeping. Her side of the family shrugged it off, but my side was livid. We've never spent a vacation with them again. Yeah, it makes sense hearing that her side of the family shrugged it off. I mean, she has to get the idea that that's okay from somewhere. Story 18. I blacked out, woke up naked on a toilet. I go to flush the toilet. The handle isn't where it should be. I look around. This is not my apartment. My phone and clothes were on the floor, but my phone was dead. I had literally just moved to this town the day before. I didn't even know my new address. So without a phone, I was stuck in this apartment. I left the bathroom, looked in the living room, and found 4 girls passed out all along the couches. Didn't know any of them. What the hell did I get myself into last night? I go open the closest bedroom door. Don't know that girl either. From what I remember, it was the first Friday of a new internship, and all the interns went out drinking. I open up the final door, and I see this girl that I recognize from the internship. She had seemed like she was into me this week, and I remember her being involved with many shots. I wasn't exactly keen on being involved with the girl, but considering how drunk I was, I wouldn't put it past myself doing something like this. I decide that I'm far too intoxicated to make any other move right now. I climb into bed with her and hope that I made the right call. Morning comes and she seems cool with everything, so I sighed a sigh of relief and asked her for a charger and a ride home. Story 19. I was at a bar in Wilmington and I got crazy drunk. I was hanging out with some college kids because my buddy I was there with got laid, so I was on my own and bored. We did a ghost tour, saw some sights, and of course a few bar crawls. I woke up in my bed in my hotel room with my buddy's one-nighter. Apparently, she had showered and crashed into the bed after they were done and hadn't bothered to move. We woke up spooning naked. Took me a good hour of panic the next morning before I realized that I had not in fact partaken in the leftover gravy stirring. I feel like OP was thinking about telling this story for a while in order to have leftover gravy stirring locked and loaded to go. Story 20. My family owns a big farm in Queensland, Australia, and it's mostly just untouched bushland, but we lease the area out to a cattle producer. Since we have breeding land, we have a lot of calves every couple of years, and there's a feral dog population that hangs around trying to pick them off. So I go around every few weeks or so and do a several-day hunting trip just walking around. It was in the middle of a drought, so I couldn't light a fire, so I just slept in a sleeping bag under a tree in an area I knew pretty well. It was a randomly cold night in summer, so I was happy to get rugged up. I woke up in the morning with my left leg feeling really tight, and I tried to shimmy my pants down the sleeping bag because I thought they were just tangled up a bit. I felt something odd, so I unzipped the sleeping bag and there was a red belly black snake wrapped around my leg having a good snooze. I was so dead tired that I wasn't even freaking out. I just tapped it awake and said, "Hey mate, can you leave?" And it released my leg and just buggered off. I should have been way more scared at the time, but I was destroyed from the day before. I can't believe this man in Australia decided to sleep on the ground, outside. That just seems like a bad idea from everything I know about Australia. Luckily, it seems like he's good at making friends with the wildlife.